Behold, we're back in this room and we're talking about beholders. It's gonna be fun. We have not been in here for a while. You guys have been seeing the back wall of Laura's bedroom for the past few weeks, and now we're back in here and it's not as spider infested and it's a bit cleaner, so we're gonna work with it. So to start off with, we are changing our upload schedule for the foreseeable future. We are now having not one, not two, but 3 videos a week, including our podcast. This is going to entail 1 episode of either Myriad Monsters, Spell Spotlight, and Saucy subclasses. And then also, on Fridays you can expect videos about modules, since we've had a lot of love for those and a lot of people wanting to see them, a lot of recommendations to do various parts of said modules, so might as well give you all what you want, and also maybe a little Icewind Ale on the side. But here we are, and we're here to talk about other stuff, and we're kicking it off with beholders. You ever seen a beholder? Hold on. Before we start, only a small percentage of our viewers are actually subscribed. Look at this chart. But yeah, only a small percentage of our viewers are actually subscribed. Subscribe! It means a lot to us, genuinely. When we hit 100, we were extremely bloody happy. And we'd be even more happy. And plus, the more subscribers we have, the more people trust, like, our channel to click on the videos and be like, yes, I know what these people are on about. Anyway, beholders. These things are quite infamous and famous. They are right at the front of the monster manual, slapped on there. They are pretty hefty creatures, and my god, one of the only creatures that adhere to the CR that they say they are. Perfection. A beholder is a 11-eyed weird creature with 10 eye stalks and 1 massive one in the center. They can range from any sort of weird appearance that you want to give them. They can have scales, they can just be like a smooth, weird brown ball of eyes. They can be a football. You can make them look like whatever you want, as long as you retain the theme of 11 eyes and a circular figure that floats in the air and goes rare. Now, a beholder is very strange in nature for a lot of different reasons. They are, for one, mentally, we cannot understand them. They are, like most aberrations, have the strangest motivations, and they're pretty difficult to pin down a lot of the time. However, as a DM, you should generally know what your beholder bad guy wants. And a beholder is going to be a bad guy, okay? The players are going to expect them to be a bad guy, so they're going to be a bad guy. They're lawful evil. Don't make him a good guy. I tried that, and it didn't work. I would not recommend it. You can have a party be affiliated with them and do things with them for time to time. Don't make them nice. They're not nice people. In fact, the first 3 words that describe a beholder in the monster manual are aggressive, hateful, and greedy. That should be enough for a party of adventurers to want to stab them. So, a beholder's ultimate belief is that everything around it is trying to stab it in the arsehole. And it might be true. Beholders are extremely skeptical of everything and anything that is around them, be it that little fish over in the corner or the Demogorgon that's down the street. They are scared of everything and think everything in the universe is out to kill it. So therefore, that is why that they become the bad guys, because they're like, okay, we're going to gather a bunch of minions and we're going to hide. And we're going to make a massive base, we're going to put all our loot in it, and we're just going to hide. It's perfect. Beholders also think they are the best things in the universe, and anything else that looks anything marginally different from it is to be eliminated instantly, or at least subjugated and oppressed and destroyed. They believe that they are the ultimate things in the universe, which, I mean, they are in some regards. Have you seen those fucks? They're powerful. Definitely other things could kill them though, but your average Joe fighter number 72 is going to die in a turn against a beholder. But it's still extremely skeptical that normal fighter 72 is going to suddenly pull out the beholder death ray gun and just shoot the beholder and it dies extremely quickly and painfully. So therefore it's like, okay, well I gotta get him before he does anything. It even extends their hatred to other beholders, because they're other people. Beholders just don't like other people at all. They're never going to really like them. The closest you're going to get is an example, Xanathar in Waterdeep Dragon Heist is quite fond of his pet fish, but that's just due to some weird attachment to it. Doesn't really see it as a person or a thing, doesn't really see it as a person or a creature, it just sees it as a thing. So that's the best you're going to get with a beholder in terms of connection to another living thing. They're going to think it's an object to be used. Beholders could also, I mentioned that they like to hide around everywhere, they could also become massive crime bosses like the Xanathar, or rule an entire kingdom just because they're scared of the kingdom. So they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to go kill the king. Now I'm the king. Now no one can say no to me. I'm going to also ruthlessly subjugate and destroy everyone in the city if they don't absolutely, like, full-on worship me, because I deserve to be worshipped. That's kind of the beholder mentality if they're in that sort of situation. They could also be like the crime boss thing I mentioned, living underground, under a large city perhaps, maybe Waterdeep. And they might have a bunch of minions like the bugbears and goblins that the Xanathar has. And they might go out and kill things and get money and help the crime boss become the scariest thing in the universe. So, beholders don't like sharing, and therefore they go into their own places and rule there. They're probably, their first objective, if they're out in the open, is nearby hill, go to that hill, go underground, go, and that's probably what they're going to want to do, because then they can fortify it. Beholders can use their disintegration powers to just carve out their own entire bases purely from one of their eyes. And generally, if an intruder breaks in and they know of it, a beholder isn't really going to just stand its ground and fight them. It's going to start running. It's going to have 8 different fail-safes installed in its dungeon. It's going to have a path that it can take where if it disintegrates a specific path, it can get out of the other side of this hill fortress that they have and just zoom out and be escorted by a bunch of guards that are already there waiting to escort him. The beholder also likes to win things, and therefore they'll keep around their statues of petrified enemies and the like, and they'll keep around memorabilia from adventurers that they've killed. I think a good way to foreshadow them being in the area is perhaps petrified people, and then also a few dead people. There's a pile of dust in a corner over there. Uh-oh, beholder time. Let's talk more stats now, because a beholder, again, don't throw it against your party until they're like level 10, 11, 12. And that's just by itself. Because a beholder is very, very lethal. And if you use all of its actions possible to do this, you can do 7 eye rays a turn, which is crazy. So, I'll tell you a bit more about eye rays when we get to it. Beholders are large aberrations, lawful evil. They have an armor class of 18, which is decent, but if you're like 10th, 11th, 12th level, you're going to be hitting more on average. Most creatures' ACs are accounting for the fact that your adventurers should be hitting more than they're missing, because it's just fun. It's just fun to keep hitting things, and it's not fun to miss things. So that's why generally adventurers will have about a 60 to 70% chance of hitting on average on their bad guys. This isn't true for some late level characters and creatures like Jarlax or Baneray or any ancient dragon. Or any dragon in general. Those things have AC at the wazoo. Hit points average at about 180, which is not extraordinary for this level. A paladin could just half its health at that level, if they roll good. Which, sure, that's fine. It doesn't really rely on its health so much, because things shouldn't really be getting too close to it. And it only has a 20-foot flying speed, and no regular movement speed. However, it is immune to prone, so it can't be just smacked down onto the floor and then it just can't move forever. Strength is 10. It's a floating ball. What more do you want? Dexterity is 14. Constitution is its highest stat at 18. Kind of has to be for this level. Intelligence 17. It's a smart boy. Wisdom 15. It can see things. And Charisma 17. So, beholders are pretty powerful in most regards. A weakness that the party could exploit is its very big lack of strength and dexterity, and just its general physicality not being that amazing. So make sure that you perhaps highlight that if they encounter it and they're like having a stealth mission, it's currently telling its minions to pick up blocks and move them because it can't do it. So they're like, ooh, let's pin him down and restrain him. So, saving throws are proficient, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. +8, +7, +8. It's going to be real hard to banish, charm, mess with in any sort of regard there. The wisdom and charisma saves are where the big bad stuff happens. In Tasha's Cauldron and everything, there was more intelligence saving throw based things that were introduced, which I kind of liked. Some of them were interesting, like psychic damage, mind whips and the like. I definitely want to explore that. So yeah, use those. It only has one skill proficiency in its perception. It has expertise in it, which means if you're running a regular beholder, it has a +12 to perception and a passive perception of 22. It has 10 eyes. Eyes on the back of its head, literally. They're everywhere. It should be able to see everything at all times. It also has dark vision out to 120 feet, because why not? Languages, deep speech and undercommon. This thing can talk. But it can only talk deep speech and undercommon because it's an aberration and they don't really need to speak common. You can give your beholder any sort of jazzy language that you feel is necessary because they're beholders and they have 17 intelligence. I think they should probably at least understand common depending on which one you're talking to. A CR of 13. That's important. Now, something interesting to note about a beholder is that it only has one feature and 2 actions and 1 type of legendary action. This thing, it's really interesting. A beholder does not inherently have legendary resistances, but depending on what party you're putting it up against, you might want to give them some. Especially at later levels when a party member could potentially have a save DC that is like 19 and the beholder's charisma save is +8 and they get banished turn 1 because they were more likely to fail. Yeah. So their feature that they have is an anti-magic cone, which is basically a bigger anti-magic field spell. In essence, an anti-magic field spell is an 8th level spell that I think just wizards and warlocks, let's have a look, clerics and wizards can take, where basically, I think you designate an area, I think it might be around you, and no spells can be cast, none can enter, none can leave, and as long as you're concentrating, all that jazz is fine. If a magic weapon tries to penetrate through it, it becomes normal while it's in the anti-magic field, and then once it's out, it's back to being normal again. Back to being magic again, even. From the main eye in the center, it spreads out a 150-foot cone of anti-magic. It's up to you whether it's visible to the players. I personally made it invisible, as it's kind of just sort of a thing that the beholder perhaps can just do, and the party can't really see that until its effects are starting to be felt. At the start of the turn, the beholder can choose where it goes. Because there aren't really too many D&D mechanics in 5th edition about positioning, like in earlier editions, enemies would be facing certain locations, and that's how a rogue got their sneak attack. You stab them in the back. That's what it was called back then, a backstab. But nowadays, they don't really turn, that's not a mechanic. So therefore, the beholder, as a free action on each of its turns, can rotate the eye as if to simulate it was moving. Now, the beholder has a bunch of eye rays, and the anti-magic cone that spreads out 150 feet from its eye can be stopped by it. Play around it. This anti-magic cone is going to dictate your fight. And if your party is fighting a beholder, and they have the anti-magic cone in front of them and all the enemies are in them, sure, that means that all the spellcasters can't cast their spells, but the beholder itself is fucked because it can't use its main actions against them. I would definitely recommend positioning it in places where you can allow your beholder to shoot eye rays out at things that aren't in it. Generally, a beholder's main targets will be the spellcasters that try and get out of the anti-magic cone. I would definitely recommend, even out of game as a DM, just saying a beholder can, if you roll bad, instantly kill you in a turn beyond redemption, like wish spell redemption level, so that your party isn't constantly going, I'm on the run about the anti-magic cone, It's really, really hard for players to work around that because the legendary actions allow it to do it as well. I'll talk more about the eye rays in a sec, because we have the first of their 2 actions to discuss. Their bite attack. A beholder can bite. They have big teeth, and it's a +5 to hit normally, reach of 5 feet, and it does 4d6 piercing damage for an average of 14. They only get one of those a turn. Don't use that unless it's an opportunity attack, because the beholder can't use an eye ray on an opportunity attack, but a beholder's not really going to use its reaction for anything else, since it has no real way to use its reaction except for an opportunity attack. And if you give him like a fighter ally that can like commanding strike a beholder to use an eye-ray as a reaction, don't do that, please. A beholder is powerful enough already. Eye rays. This is the main action. You can take the eye rays action and shoot 3 eye rays. You can select who's being targeted by them, and you actually must roll a d10 to dictate which eye ray hits. If you feel like this doesn't fit, you can choose what eye ray you're going to use. I wouldn't recommend it. Personally, the random chance of a beholder just shooting someone that's immune to charm with a charm ray is great. The party can rely on there being a small chance of escaping out of a very bad situation because the beholder shot the wrong eye ray. And yeah, it's sick. On this same action, you can't get the same eye ray. So that means that if you roll a 1 and then a 1, you got to re-roll that next 1 for something else. It keeps the combat going. Let's have a look at each eye ray. The range is 120 feet, so keep this in mind. First one is a charm ray. All of the DCs for this stuff are 60. So, target must succeed a wisdom saving throw or be charmed by the beholder for 1 hour or until the beholder harms the creature. So, that's an interesting thing, because a charmed creature can't attack the charmer or target them with harmful abilities or magical effects, which is amazing. If you charm a creature and then focus it all on the other person, let's say you charm the fighter, what are they going to do now? They can't hit you anymore. So they're going to be turning to dodge actions and hitting the other guys. Normally charm effects with creatures do other things, like a dominate monster or a dominate person, where you can directly control them. Sometimes it means that you spend all of your action just staring at the target. The charmed status effect isn't really explored as much as you'd think, unfortunately, unless you're dealing with a fae. Second one is a paralyzing ray, where it's a constitution saving throw, or they're paralyzed for a minute, and they get to make saving throws at the end of their turns. Pretty neat one. However, it doesn't really give the beholder that much. But the beholder, other than its bite, does not have an attack roll. Therefore, you're probably not going to benefit from this ray in comparison to if the beholder also had a few melee minions on its side that could then hit the target once it was paralyzed. The fear ray. Similarly to the paralyzation one, it's a wisdom saving throw this time though. They're frightened for a minute and they can repeat the saving throw every turn. Frightened just means that you can't really go closer to them and you have disadvantage on everything or you can see them, which is kind of cool, I guess. I forgot to mention about the paralyzing ray that paralyzation means that you can't take actions or reactions, and if anything hits you within 5 feet with an attack, it's an automatic critical hit. So I'd definitely be careful of that. A slowing ray. This is pretty interesting. It's like a mini slow spell. The target must succeed a dexterity saving throw, or their speed is halved for 1 minute, and they can't take reactions, and on their turn, they can only take an action or a bonus action, not both. They can repeat a saving throw at the end of their turn, ending the effect on a success. This one is pretty interesting because it's kind of like a mini slow spell. And none of this stuff is concentration, by the way, I should point out. A beholder can have 3 or 4 of these effects going off at once on their targets. Enervation ray. This is the first damage one, it's the most underwhelming. You should probably hope for this at late level, since it is a constitution saving throw and it's 8d8 necrotic damage. It's like a blight spell. The party will probably be fine taking a blight spell in comparison. And they still take half damage if they succeed though. So there's something. Reliable damage to get out there. Telekinetic ray. This one's pretty interesting. If the target is a creature, they must succeed on a strength saving throw, or they move, the beholder moves it up to 30 foot in any direction. And they're restrained until the start of the beholder's next turn, or until the beholder just goes, or gets incapacitated in this regard. I had a very interesting story about telekinesis, which was very unreliable, where the wizard in our Curse of Strahd game kept trying to cast it on Strahd, and Strahd kept getting like 20s and 22s and 23s on his strength checks to avoid them. Telekinesis is a really fun themed thing. I would more rely on the telekinetic ray for the restrained condition. This one isn't as good unless you have a very specific situation where moving a creature, perhaps, into an anti-magic field is good. Maybe they're concentrating on a spell and the telekinetic ray can fling them baste into there and uh-oh, haste gone. And now the fight is useless. You can manipulate tools, containers, open boxes, and move other objects with this as well. However, I generally rule that outside of combat, a beholder can choose whatever eye ray it wants. So that's just for the sake of roleplay. A sleep ray, interestingly enough. Target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, or they're going to plop unconscious, and they wake up if they take damage, or someone else wakes them up, and constructs and undead are immune to this. The unconscious condition is a motherfucker. You can still be on health and be unconscious. It's just that when you're on 0, you start making death saves. This is a reliable method to start getting free crits on them, because a crit on an unconscious creature within 5 feet, hits on an unconscious creature with 5 feet, is also a critical hit, meaning you're doing almost double damage. There's a lot of stuff a beholder can do. It's very scary. Petrification ray. This one's fun. Dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, they begin to get restrained, and it gets a turn. If they fail the first saving throw, they're going to be restrained. The next one is another dexterity saving throw. If they succeed, they're fine. If they fail, they're petrified until freed by greater restoration or other magic. Ow! Ow. That's bad. If you throw this at a party somewhat early game and one of them gets fucking petrified on turn 2 of combat, and there's no real way to get him out of it, oh boy. That is not going to be good. Be careful with that one. A disintegration ray. The last 2 rays are damage, so be careful of these. It's a dexterity saving throw, or they're going to take 10d8 force damage. And if it reduces the creature to 0 hit points, they become a pile of dust. And if you're a pile of dust, it is much harder to be revived. Much harder. So I definitely be careful with this one. I did not actually disintegrate any of my targets in the Beholder incident where 2 of them died. One of them died to full damage, or went unconscious due to full damage, and the other, I believe, got killed by a minion that was there. I should not have put extra people in that room. I put a Mind Flayer in there. That was a bad idea. And finally, the Death Ray, which is 10d10 of necrotic damage on a failed dexterity saving throw. Now, these last 2 are not like if they succeed, they take half. If they succeed, they're taking nothing. But if the target dies, if the Death Ray reduces it to 0 hit points, as it should. So they get 3 of these on their action, and they can also have 3 of these outside of their action because of their legendary actions that they can take outside of their turn. They have 3 more eye rays that they can use. A Beholder's Lair. Lair actions. They can make the ground slimy. They can sprout appendages and grapple things out of the walls. And they can make another eye ray open on a solid surface within 60 feet of the Beholder. You can roll a random eye ray and shoot. They can't repeat an effect over and over again, unfortunately. There's also regional effects where creatures within a mile feel like they're being watched, even though they probably aren't. They might be. There might be some scrying action going on. And when the Beholder sleeps, reality starts warping. Maybe harmless slime appears, weird trinkets start popping around in the base. They are not magical, and they stay around for only 24 hours before disappearing forever. Okay, that was a big video about one monster. I have way more to talk about in terms of the Beholder and its family, because a Beholder is not just a Beholder. There are also other Beholders. There are other little mini types of Beholders. There are different forms of Beholders. There are Lich Beholders. D&D likes Beholders. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. There is a Discord. There is a Patreon. You can spend £3 a month and you get a bunch of homebrew that I make. We've done a lot since the last time I started recording here. Thank you for watching. Bye. My God, I don't want to run another one of these for a while.